Okay, so I'm going to be re-recording the first 15 minutes or so um, because I had some internet connectivities. I will say that for the next 6 months or so, I cannot guarantee that there will not be other times when I'm at the internet poor setup, but I'm doing my best, and if need be, I can re-record some or all of it. So. I did with the help of a fellow student there, I did figure out why I couldn't get the poll to show up. It's not a feature on my account. So totally optional, but um if you would like to email me with these poll questions, that would be super. Um I know a few of you are super beginner and a few of you have quite a lot of trailing experience. So this is just to kind of help me assess things. So here's the next set of questions and the last set of questions. So a couple of you mentioned that the dog who you are doing trailing with or who you hope to do trailing with are also therapy dogs. So this might not at all be suitable for you. You might not have the interest. Um, this course is focused on the sport, of course, but some of you might be interested in inquiring if facility walk-offs dogs are needed in your area. Um, so sometimes the dogs with the really great temperaments for therapy work might not be ideally suited to look for real lost people, but sometimes they are. So if you're interested in having that be an asset to the community, definitely train, have your dog certified to some recognized standard where the test is blind and all teams get a unique trail. So it could definitely be the FCI IRO standard that we're talking about here, Georgia Canine Standard. In on the East Coast and Midwest, Appawata is really big. Depending on where you are, um, you might have other testings, but again, blind and unique. A few of you chimed in that you're in the Northern Virginia, DC area. Again, hey, if anyone wants to come out and join, we have a list of, I don't know, maybe 18 people. So certainly there's no time to get all 18 people run in a particular session, but if there's enough to work it, we get together. Anyone visiting the area, drop me a note. One of you mentioned that you had a mixed breed, and I almost positive I mentioned it last time, but just to be sure, if you want to participate in the sport, there is a minimum age, 14 months for the beginner level, and there's a proof of rabies, and things of that nature. But otherwise, all dog, mix, pedigree, intact, neutered, crop doc, natural, any dog who can do the work is welcome to compete. Um, so this was a note about Sandra and Adam. Um, as you look for a team, you can make tons of progress having your dogs look for each other. For advanced work, you'll need at least one other person, um, because to progress, and we won't get into it tonight, but as we continue through these series, you will see that having an educated flanker will be a huge benefit to get you to blind trails. So you're going to need at least one other person who can be the hider, and then you can be the flanker for the other one, or another flanker. So for Adam, so man trailing can definitely be used as an outlet for fun for people and dogs. It can be great outlet dogs. So bloodhounds are often innately motivated for the work, so there's a strong desire to quote unquote find the man, and this will go a long way for your benefit. So if your goal is to have a fun time, then yes, it does not matter how you get to the trail there. Um, Air scent can lead you astray, so that will be not tonight, but in a future lecture, how to handle that. So Aleta, I hope I'm pronouncing this right. So we're going to talk a lot about what it looks like when your dog is following trail layer ground scent, trail layer air scent, or has switched to a different scent or odor. So you can start making a catalog of what your dog looks like by just observing it either when he's off leash or away from man trailing. You know what his body language looks like when he's smelling the ground, when he's smelling something in the air, when he's distracted by something. Uh, Two of you talked about sport detection and sport man trailing, so definitely can work. So as you progress in the trailing, you should have a plan of what to do if the dog pulls you off the quote unquote man hunt to indicate birch, etc. Sometimes the essential oils are left in public places unbeknownst to you. Um, a woman in my general area who is very good at AKC tracking has, at one point, she had a dog trained for narcotics, and she was running that dog in an AKC, I believe it was a VST. It was probably VST. Anyway, VSTs, for those of you who do not know, have an extremely low pass rate, and her dog was doing beautifully, um, and then switched to indicating narcotics, pulling the dog off the track. So sometimes narcotics can be found on college campuses, and that's where her track was laid. So, but just something for you to set up to have a plan. So, Tina, I didn't know that your dachshund's name was Banks, Banks. I thought it was Banx. So he has the nose and genetics to be a people hunter for sure, and his cuteness will make it really easy to find trail layers. So in the other image is my Dutch Shepherd, who is very clear-headed and never ever had a whoopsie bite, but he did intimidate people. So we're going to touch upon it a teeny bit tonight and in a later module about the bark alert versus the silent alert. Um, but being cute definitely helps to look for people to hide for you. Joanne, my buddy, has a mountain cur. He has a great nose, and I'm sure yours does too. Jillian, I'm sorry for your loss. Starting a puppy will be really exciting. Nikki and everybody, you would be most welcome at any ARSA event. So I want to touch a little bit upon trust your dog. So we'll, I'll touch upon it right now, and we're going to be talking about it through the course. So you need to put in the training first. Most of the time should be setting up clear training for him, perfecting your dog reading, your line handling, your situational skills, so he truly understands what is being asked of him. Trust comes later. Marco, I'm going to be at the IRO test near you in August, so it would be neat to meet up if you will also be attending. So for Amanda and everyone else, for sports search and rescue, there are two options. You can do the full title, which includes normal things, sit, stand, down, heel, come, stay, as well as some dexterity tasks like the horizontal ladder. Or you can do just scent work and skip the obedience and dexterity. Signing up, then passing scent work would not result in an FCI AKC recognized title or enable you to enter a championship, but you can definitely still compete. There is a little bit of obedience for the scent work. So Tin would need to sit at heel position as you check in with the judge. You would say, "Hi, my name is Amanda. This is Tin. We're checking in for man trailing level V." There's also a little bit of obedience at the end where Tin would need to do a formal alert, either quietly being next to the trail layer or barking at the trail layer. Then you would heel him a few feet away and have him lie down while you asked if the trail layer is okay. Does she need medical care? Things of that nature. Finally, you can you and Tin would heel several steps away to the judge and announce that you'd found the lost person. So although we haven't been able to meet up in a while, I know that you and Tin could totally do this little bit of obedience. And for everybody, again, indications will be coming in a later module. I want to make sure you and the dog find the person and not worry so much about what the dog does when he finds the person. So Jesse and Leslie, sometimes the precast works for a given team and sometimes not. Everyone will need to cast their dog at some point, but the precast, that is casting prior to giving the scent article, is team and situation dependent. So this is a South African Borbal that I met, and this dog was really awesome at trailing. So man trailing for every dog, recast not for everyone. We're going to talk a little bit more about motivation in a later module, but for now, I will say it's really important that the dog is happy in the setting. So many dogs enjoy hunting humans, but it's imperative that we first make sure he's comfortable in the trailing setting. For his initial trails, find a spot where he's confident and eager to work. This is more important than if scenting conditions are good. If there aren't places where he feels secure to leave your side, put trailing on hold and expose him to more of the world. Find 3 places to take him and feed him treats or his regular food there. Rotate between these 3 places. Both the familiarity on future outings and expecting to be fed there will create positive expectations at these spots. Also, we want to make sure he's comfortable going near people. So some really great trailing dogs don't want to interact with other people. It's not that they're nervous or aggressive toward others, but they don't want even a fleeting relationship with the hiders. This is completely okay. To compete, your dog would need to be within several feet of and behaving in a neutral manner toward the hider. If he's too shy for this level of interaction, find one person he will hunt for and will help you with the training. If there's a stronger than remote chance he would bite the handler, he is not suitable to compete in the sport nor search for actual lost people. But it's possible that you could still do trailing as a fun activity when you set up safeguards for the public, your hider, and any training friends. So, one other question came in. So, assuming you're talking in the context of trailing, and she has her nose planted somewhat on what you assume is a distraction and not going forward toward the trail layer, this is what I would do. But if this is not what you meant, please send another email to clarify. So in the moment, I would give my end of session cue, so no more opportunity for reinforcement. I would take off the harness and neutrally put the dog back in the car. I would work on obedience, especially going away things like go to the platform, circle the tree, retrieve, whatever sort of going away skills you have built into her. I would start in easy places, then more distracting ones. This works on an implied leave it because you're going to be saying, no, really, you just need to go to the platform, even when there is an interesting smell on the ground. Separately, I would work on a verbal leave it. When I say leave it, you must return to the task. I would work scent vessels in distracting places to get her used to working in a variety of settings. So, a difference between tracking and trailing. So for man trailing, we need to make the trail layer, getting to the trail layer very rewarding since it is the only external reward point we have. If there were articles deliberately or accidentally left on the trail and you saw them, but the dog did not indicate them, what would you do? If you lead the dog to them, this gives the wrong message. If you correct the dog for not indicating them, this also gives the wrong message. And what if, through obedience to articles, the dog is pulled off the strongest source of trail layer scent? So, again, as I mentioned many times the first lecture, I love footstep tracking. I do article, back chain, footstep tracking all the time. Um, Sometimes that can be transferred over to man trailing, but that's not going to be the focus of this course. I got one question. Does this does this work, and how does this work maybe conflict with upland bird hunting? Um, so my short hair has extensive upland experience. The conflict with man trailing is not too bad, but if you want to compete or look for actual lost people, you should be able to move him past birds while man trailing. Um, Hopefully we're going to get to it tonight. I suggest you begin with obedience and or scent vessel work, which hopefully we're going to cover tonight. Um, in bird areas, obviously not going too deep there. I will say urban pigeons, or this time of year, at least by me, there's loads of doves. If your dog likes waterfowl, you need to trail her past ducks and geese, especially obnoxious Canadas that are going to be on a field most likely. I will say when working my short hair as a puppy, he would definitely track the bird planter. So this didn't cause any troubles for me, but don't be surprised if that happens. With both my short hair and dogs and other dogs in the past, I've done high-end retriever work. Um, so because of my personality, I don't do the micromanaging of some dogs for blind retrieves. But if you and Femke like are bound for the HRC ground or the SRS, having her willing to make her own decisions for man trailing might be a problem. Marion and Max asked if you're unsure if the dog is tracking or trailing. Um, so I put again the couple books there. So tracking dogs, whether AKC, IGP, or RH style, work nearly exclusively on ground disturbance. So we'll be working very near the footfalls. So trailing dogs use ground disturbance, skin rafts, and contact scent. There's differences between the techniques. So for footstep tracking, if you want to go that route, I really like the Dick Stall work. For man trailing, you can read the book by Shetler and Coker. Will this class be a good fit? So it's geared to help people to be proficient to the FCI IRO standards. So without knowing your goals, I can't say if it would be a good fit. So I'm going to go over this quickly. This is just a summary from last time. Again, all these slides will be sent to you, and I apologize for the intermittent internet connectivity. Uh, Yeah, so we talked about the runaway and the hot start. Tonight we're going to talk about a calm start. We talked about start rituals. We talked about the difference between leave it and back to work. Gave you some homework about leave it. Oh, so sorry. Um, so cues for trailing. So obviously use your own words. If you also do tracking, sport detection, don't use the same words. So a dog smelling a stick on the ground, it's probably distraction, but you don't know. So you want to say back to work because maybe the trail layer held it, spit on it, stepped on it. We talked about the dog barking at skateboarders or something that's clearly not work related, so that would be a leave it. Do not repeat search unless you are restarting the whole trail. Be very careful about a bad leave it. So let's say you think maybe your dog is thinking about getting into a pond of water because you think he wants to swim or harass the frogs. But what if the trail layer walked very near the water or even several feet from the shore, but the scent is now at that shoreline? So if you're ever in doubt, back to work is much safer. So homework for this time, working on leave it away from man trailing. It's best to perfect leave it in many other aspects of the dog's life at first. Leave it must not be a disruptor. The dog must actually leave whatever and attend to the task at hand and not need to be cued to leave it again. I think some people say they think they have a good leave it and they're like, "Oh yeah, I just tell her every single time just to leave it, leave it, leave it, leave it." That is not sufficient. So as your dog comes across the article, say search, plant your feet, and let the line out. As the dog has committed to a direction, um, follow before the line becomes taut. If the line gets wrapped around a tree or lamppost, pick it up ahead and let the line out. If it gets wrapped around some big obstruction, I always tell my dog he is good since he accidentally got popped, since he got jarred by the harness. So I tell him he's a good boy as I unwrap him. We're going to talk a lot more about line handing on a later module, but I just wanted to kind of get everybody started here. And we have some homework here. I mentioned before, dog is free to walk and explore anything that's not dangerous or naughty. Your job is to prevent the line from being tangled in his legs, on roots, around trees, etc. Especially for the beginner person, a lot of times you are not giving the dog enough line. Most of the line should be up for the dog. I want to talk about some harnesses, and if people have questions, you can email me oh, with an image without seeing your dog working. I'm not sure if I could answer very well, but I will say um, if there's really only one style of harness that fits your dog well, you can buy a duplicate and put maybe cedarwood oil or some other dog safe odor to make the harness distinct in his mind. But it's best if the harness is different. Um, you cannot use it for competition, but for training, some people like a very wide, like 3-inch plus padded collar. Um, the tracking line will be kept at his spine, not under his legs like a traditional IGP tracking dog. So long harnesses are good for straight pulling, like bike joring, but man trailing with the dog's erratic body movement benefits from a short style harness. Long harnesses often no longer sit correctly after that first turn or circle by the dog, resulting in tension, which may be irritating or even aversive to the dog. Um, without seeing the dog work, I can't really judge, but all else being equal, you would like the clip attached nearer to the dog's nose than behind. Further back, um, you, the handler, are exerting more control. But we want the dog to take us to the trail layer scent, not to control him from behind. So the clip nearest to the base of the neck is generally better. So this is a question pause slide, but you can see here the Y design, and there's no material near his throat. So again, I apologize for all the issues, but are there questions about cues, the rudiments of line handling? Again, we're going to give many slides dedicated to line handling in a later module, or questions about the harness. So I'm going to pause for a second.
Melissa, I have one question about the cues.
Yes,
It's Leslie. Are all of the things that you mentioned okay to say during the trial for the IRO trial?
yes, yes. You can definitely say leave it, back to work. Um, if you wanted to say search again, you can. The only uh, the only time you should be silent is when you are very near the trail layer, because any help that you give the dog or the trail layer gives the dog to perform the indication, then you would lose all those points. Um, but no, you can definitely be saying leave it. Now, if your dog is urine marking every 5 feet and you say leave it, your points are already going down the drain. So, but go ahead and say leave it if you need to.
Okay, thanks.
Um, any other questions? All right. So speaking of line logistics, there's two extremes for material. Rolled leather, it gets caught the least and is expensive. Biothane gets caught the most, but it is inexpensive and easy to clean. Some people wear gloves. So if you wear gloves only in the winter, you may need to relearn handling. The feel of the line tension will tell you how well the dog is working. So for the line itself, at least 10 feet, more than 33, 10 meters, is too cumbersome. Within this range, longer is almost always better. So alongside a busy road or approaching an intersection, walk up the line, letting the dog have more when it's safe. So you have two options for where the rest of the line is. So when holding the line, other than at the end, you could let it drag or coil it. So most people let the rest of the line um, just be on the ground unless it is unsafe. Some gather it up so none dangles. There's pros and cons to each, so you need to find a way that works for you. Um, one other tool that may be helpful to you is the Man Trailing app. So I think the app is, I don't know, $8, $12 per year for the professional version, which you would need to do for the overlay. So the free version, I will say for those of you using it and getting a trail layer to use the free version, it will give you an error and say you need to pay if the old trails are not deleted from that person's phone. So your trail layer who doesn't want to do the overlay can stick with the free version as long as they delete the old trails. So I also understand there's a dating app with has a similar icon, so you should check which one you do. If you have a tool to keep track of an off-leash dog, depending on the exact thing you have, you can give the part the dog normally wears to your trail layer and do that. I have used Caltopo and other SAR specialized software. It's definitely better than nothing, at least the versions I've been exposed to. But for training, um, man trailing, this app, or using something to hunt, to track a hunting dog, um, works better. So if you can get the trail layer to walk around, um, to learn the man trailing app, this is definitely better than using like a fitness app. Um, but sometimes I'll have trail layers just give me an image for from a fitness app, so that's better than nothing. So homework, download and play with the free version of the man trailing app and decide if it's a good choice for you. Um, one little tip. So to share the GPX files, either everybody needs an iPhone or everybody an Android, or use WhatsApp or share via email attachment. So any question about line material, gloves, where the rest of the line is, or how to record your trails? Okay then. So this image is too challenging for a beginner dog, but if your dog wouldn't go forward across this grate, or turning left into the drain, or turning right into the shallow water, you need to work on his confidence away from man trailing work. So if your dog is worried, quit trailing for the session, maybe play in the area, maybe play a further bit away from the area of concern. Maybe have your dog watch other people work. Depending on the level of concern, you might need to put trailing on pause for months and just work on the dog's confidence. If your dog is distracted, and this is for the very foundational work, we're going to talk about what happens uh, as your dog and you progress. But for the beginner work, just have the trail layer come back, maybe shorten the trail, switch to a runaway with a better tease, or maybe give the dog a break and lay a new trail away from the squirrel jamboree. Away from trailing, work on obedience around distractions, work on your leave it. If he's uninterested, you know, was the trail layer not animated enough, or maybe was the reward not sufficient? I will say low dopamine serotonin dogs. Um, so this is often applied to livestock guardian breeds. Uh, Sometimes dogs who are on medication, you know, or if maybe your dog is ill, tired, or you may be trailing too often or making the trails too difficult. These are all different reasons why the dog might be uninterested. Your dog might be quote unquote sticky. So this is not usually an issue of too much obedience, but is too much come, heel, remain with me type obedience. So away from trailing, do a lot of work on a send away. I mentioned before, have them run to a platform, circle a tree, something like that. Uh, Almost all beginners have their trails be far too long. So dogs will benefit from multiple short trails as they learn to enjoy the game, or you can alternate with a runaway, a short trail, and then another runaway. Um, again, for beginner dogs, we're talking 50 feet, 80 feet. This is an appropriate distance. If it's too long, the dog is going to lose, uh, maybe lose hope of finding the trail layer, easily get distracted, and then it puts you and the dog in a bad position. So other solutions will be suggested through the course, but for now, if the dog isn't into it and you're not sure what to do, just quit and work on building confidence and motivation. Like I mentioned before, footstep tracking has reward opportunities potentially every single footstep, but man trailing just has the big reward at the end. So he needs to really need to want to get to the trail layer. So if your dog is usually quite confident, I wouldn't do anything to address this. I'm not sure if any of you are running blinds just yet, but if you are, if he recovers from the startle, change it to a known trail. Call the trail layer and get the full map, or tell your flanker to help you finish this out. If he has low confidence in other situations, work to generally build confidence away from trailing. If your dog is fearful of plastic bags caught in branches being blown about, it's more helpful to work on confidence around many settings, not focusing too much on plastic bags. If you focus too much on the one thing, the dog will be sensitized. That is, he will become more sensitive to that. Uh, so I'm going to lecture more about confidence and what to do, but um, in the meantime, here's some ideas if the beginner dog is startled by the trail layer. So here's a little summary. We talked about um, a cue to sniff the item and another to go to the human with this scent, when to use leave it versus back to work. Talked about the basics of line handling, characteristics of a good harness and line, using the man trailing app, and a suggestion to handle some what ifs. So here's another bit of homework. So I really want you to learn from the one with the longer nose. So depending on your dog and the weather, um, I mentioned when we started this call, the distraction might be shade seeking. So identify it when off trail. So if while trailing, you see him veer off to a shady spot, you'll be able to distinguish the difference between shade seeking and following trail layer scent. For those in this course that are doing or preparing for real search and rescue, you should know what your dog looks like when encountering human remains. We don't have time to go into the dual dogs, but even if your dog is only expected to search for live people, there may be human remains encountered. And so you and your flankers need to know if you suspect human remains in your area. So are there questions about what to do if things don't go smoothly? So I will work to work on a break. I'll try to pull up the break slide, and so we'll pick it up in 10 minutes. I will put the time on the other slide. Can I get folks to comment in the chat if I should go for an additional 15 minutes since the meeting got off to a bad start? All right. Perfect. Perfect. All right. I will wait um 3 more minutes because I said 9:08. But once we hit 9:08, we will be talking about sense-specific trailing. All right. So we talked about the hot start last time. So the most common and proven way is to start in clean places, not a lot of ground disturbance, not a lot of other people, distractions, where the dog sees the trail layer, drop the item. So gradually introduce other people in the vicinity as visual distractions. When adding other scents, Initially, these are older, so it's a very easy choice for the dog to make. Another method is focus, calm, start. That's what we're going to talk about tonight. So we focus on the matching the scent item to the person and not running trails. This technique begins in a place where there are other incorrect people from the very start. Next, we talked briefly about a scent lineup. So this is where we just match scent to scent without the help or distraction of the owner of the scent. So I like to do this with scent tubes, which we'll talk about at some point. So this is a easy setup to determine if your dog does scent discriminate. Um, for those of the footstep tracking background or already started in man trailing, you might just want to set this up to see how your dog does. So the discriminating dog is going to ignore the green trail or briefly pause there and resume work on his own. Ideally, the dog handler team can run this blind. So blind to the orange path and blind to the green path. The orange and green are laid at the same time, with the track layers being about the same. Same sex, same weight, both smokers, both not smokers, whatever that is. Um, so we're going to talk way more about calm start and scent vessels momentarily, but any questions on determining if your dog already knows how to discriminate? All right, so um, this video, I will say that so first, the trail layer introduces through the cage. Also note there's a wrong person there right from the start. So I'm the trail layer here, so I'm feeding this dog just some treats through the cage. Um, and I'm just gauging the dog's interest. So next, I'm going to sniff the article. When the article is brought to the crate, I'm hoping the dog is going to also sniff the article. So I keep sniffing. So this dog is, squirming around, trying to solicit attention, not looking, not focused on the sock. And then I move the item to see that the dog is following it with her nose. So I have not said anything. Well, I think I asked the handler if she wants me to continue, but I'm not saying anything to the dog. Unfortunately, the food was not really great. So there's a little bit chaos with that. So I asked the handler if we go on. So we're going to start the same way. And the dog has a leash attached. This is just for safety reasons because we're working in a parking lot. Um, it does not matter at all if the dog goes to the scent item or to the person. Um, as we continue watching this video, you'll see um, that usually, you know, the article is at the start and the person is at the end. So having the two together is odd. We do we do finish. I'm not sure. Maybe this puppy might not I don't recall if it was ready, but the end of the calm start sequence, the article and the person are separate. But so it's just step three, we just keep building the distance, but we still every time begin with the little introduction. And you notice that woman, they're wearing blue, right? This is the incorrect person. We would have had more incorrect people, but we just didn't have that many people here. So I'm going along the same path. So I'm not going erratically different places off of the car. So this is a young Labrador puppy, very friendly. So she's going to the camera person. And so the camera person is just ignoring her. And then so she comes to me, she gets rewarded. If she had run into this other woman would have just ignored her. So I am telling her she's a good girl and petting her. The calm start is great for dogs that are a bit shy, that don't want to interact with the helper, or would be so overly aroused, um, or that the people this owner could get to lay trails cannot do a good hot start. That is the case in this situation. The dog would do best with a hot start, but the owner of this dog does not have people who can do hot starts well. So the owner has people who can do calm starts well. So better to use a calm start exercise with this dog instead of, maybe only trailing, once every other month when you can get a hot start. So I was originally going to keep going deeper into the parking lot, but then more vehicles showed up. So I'm making a turn, but notice I'm not adding, um, different branches off of the trail. So I am praising her uh, because the dog appreciates that. But again, oftentimes you use a calm start with dogs that really don't want anything to do with the trail layer. They're not going to bite them, but they don't really want praise. Um, so I'm making a hook around this car because more vehicles came in, but we always go back to start with the little introduction here at the vehicle. Um, so as you can see, this video was made in the winter, um, and I was able to see this dog this past week, and yes, in fact, the dog really would prefer petting and praise. It's funny, it's a Labrador, does certainly like eating, but the bigger reward for this dog is petting and praise. And so as the calm start goes on, again, every time I'm doing this little introduction, um, I said it's a little bit not ideal here fluidity wise because the owner gave me teeny weeny pieces of kibble that didn't really get into the crate very well. Um, yep. So I was not scuffing to add scent. It was just because of the snow. So did she come to me because I was the one that's been giving her food and praise for the last several minutes, or because she's linking the article to me, right? We can't know. We talked about this before. It's totally fine that the dog grabbed the article. Um, no reprimands in man trailing except for, something like the dog is gonna bite a small child or something like that. So here it starts to look more like normal man trailing, but again, I begin with introduction at the crate. I reward her for smelling the sock or glove, whatever that is. And again, there's no nose. So if the dog happened to stay with the hat and not come to me, it's fine. We would just take that as a change for the next session, future day. If the dog takes the hat and brings it to me, that's fine. I'll say as this happens, so the camera woman reminded the handler, just let the dog work. The dog has to figure out um her uh the dog has to figure out how to get to the trail there. So again, so through the crate, step one, if the dog cannot be crated, you could do some other similar barrier, so the dog can still see. Dog is not wearing a trailing harness. Helper has the scent article, which holds scent well, leather, cloth, etc. Or if you think the dog is really gonna go after the item, um, we talked about, a brick or a metal water bottle. Bricks actually hold scent very well. Um, so in view of the dog, the helper is sniffing at the article. Again, the helper is sniffing. The helper is not making other attractant to the dog, not running exciting, not making noise, not pointing. Again, the helper goes to the dog and the helper loudly sniffs at the article in front of the dog. When the dog sniffs too, the helper gives a treat through the barrier, and repeat this a few times until the dog is interested in the proceedings. When I have work dogs that were extremely timid or um, maybe wanted more to bite me than to play this game, this step one is perfect because then everybody is safe and then we can assess, should we continue? Is the handler comfortable in me continuing? Am I comfortable continuing with this particular dog? So step two, the dog is geared up and is crated. Uh, Ideal setup is the dog is dragging a 6 to 10 foot line attached to a neck collar, unless it's safe to be off leash. So if this is not possible, the handler can lightly hold the end of a longer leash to prevent some unsafe behavior, but not impeding or influencing the dog. The helper walks to the car, sniffs the article, then walks about 6 feet away, places the article at the feet. The dog is let out with minimal fuss or restraint. The helper rewards the dog for sniffing the item, and we're going to repeat this a few times. Step 3, same exact setup, double the distance. Helper goes to the car, sniffs the item in view of the dog, walks away, leaving the article at the feet. I'm going to repeat this a few times. So in a single session, you just want to make the trail longer instead of moving off in different directions. If the dog becomes unfocused, go back to mutual sniffing of the article through the crate and shortening the distance. Step 4, we're going to add distance, but now we're going to break the dog's vision of the walking away helper. We're going to start the same way. The helper goes to the car and sniffs the item and now walks off. But now the helper goes behind a corner or a tree, but not far. The article is still at the helper's feet. So we can also cover the dog's crate so they don't see where the helper left. If there's other people in this area, it's no problem. They just need to be still. The dog makes her own decision on who to go to. The expectation is for the dog to sniff the article and be rewarded by the helper. It's beneficial, if it's beneficial, to do more in the same session. Instead of walking the same trail again, the helper just goes past where they were the previous time. Again, we're not making offshoots. We're making one long trail. So step 5, this is where things look more like trailing. Helper goes to the crate, sniffs the article, drops the article in view of the dog, then the crate is covered and the helper walks away. Using a leash, bring the dog to the article, say search at the article, let the dog go off leash, or with the dropped line to search. So this is all about making the relationship between the article and the person. As always, don't advance until the dog is showing some comprehension. So here's them written out. So I'm going to skip this, but you're going to have these in the slides. And a summary, you use just one trail layer for the entire session. If the dog is sufficiently motivated and understanding and time allows, you can run through steps 1 through 7 in a single session. It's best that the helper is someone willing, but not the normal trail layer. So you know they're really connecting of the scent item to the person and not just finding their buddy. In future setups, start with step 1 at a different location and a different person. Once this is fluid in new sessions, start with a later step until you're ready for a cold start with anyone at any place. Again, the goal is to link the item to the person. We're not looking for a correct indication here. So a sophisticated helper will prevent the dog from practicing the wrong thing like jumping up, but don't try for a proper indication. Um, and don't, it, I mean, if there's something egregious that the dog does, like biting the helper, of course you can correct that, but um, we just want the dog finding the helper. So if the dog is too distracted by the environment, it's no problem. Just end the session for the day and pick up at an earlier stage on another training day. Um, it's hard to find people to lay trails for you. So some of that you can do demos, especially if you're with a group, either an actual search and rescue group or some training group. Um, so you can do this as a demo, and if you're worried your dog won't match the correct person in the stress of the demo, you have my blessing to make it fake and make the subject the spouse of the dog handler or something like that. Folks will still love the demo, I promise. So, summary of the calm start. Again, it's an alternative to the hot start. We talked about a way to check to see if your dog scent discriminates now. And again, calm start progression. The mimicry, I sniff my sock. Hopefully you sniff the sock. very short distance, increasing distance, breaking the view, have the article at the exit, then the cold start. One trail layer per session, restart steps with new location, no indication expected, and stop if the dog loses interest. So any questions on the calm start? Okay, super. We are going to talk about the um, scent vessels. So I mentioned last time, and probably will mention again in the future, one reason man trailing is hard is that you need the trail layer and ideally an even larger support team. But you can make progress on your own with scent matching, and in doing so, you will advance faster. So also, as I mentioned last time, man trailing is very positive activity. There are no reprimands except for something very egregious. So working on your dog, as described in the next several slides, prepares him for scent discrimination, but also allows you freedom to work at your pace and the dog's pace. If he isn't interested in working, then it's easy enough to pull him back, put him back in the house, and move on with your day. Unlike at a group training date where where you would probably feel pressure to make him work because this is your only opportunity, and maybe because other people are watching you. Um, so the scent tubes, um, you can use the thing like they often use for detection work. Are I'm sorry, scent tubes are used for detection work, but rarely for scent-specific discrimination. So you don't need to buy expensive tubes. You can use other containers or even have correct and incorrect items on the ground, like the Kennel Club has their obedience, or you can attach it to table legs. So I'm going to show this video. The dog is not perfect here. Um, so we would work on less whining and not and to properly leave the uh, so in future sessions we would work on the not whining and not leaving the lineup. And it's definitely much easier to work on the whining and the leaving the lineup at home on your own schedule than on a group training day. So in this plastic jar, I have the scent of someone, and the matching scent of that same person is in one of these 6 jars. And in the 5 other jars, um, there's smells of other people. So his food was to the side the whole time. So he has to do this work. Um, all right, so a little pre-training before you get going here. Um, they use this term a lot with detection, pay on sniff. So this is really good at the start or when the search is difficult. So once you and he are fluid, or if it's not hard, you can certainly expect um, your indication. So his indication is to silently down, which you saw there. So you can use sit, stand, down, or a bark. The tips on the formal indication will come later, but you can definitely just do pay on sniff. Um, Another pre-training, you want to work on taking scent from in my case, it was a plastic jar. But so from a glass jar, plastic jar, baggie, or held by you or on the ground, away from the lineup. So we're going to have tips on this a few slides from now. And so you can do either room service, where you bring the food or toy to the correct vessel. That promotes stability. Or you can mark and release um, the food or toy away from the lineup. That promotes enthusiasm. So which does your dog need? So you can also mix it up. And you want to make sure um, you don't stay on the uh, gauze. Um, you don't want to just put a correct scent and nothing else because we don't want a gauze detection dog. All right, so I'm going to elaborate on each of these in upcoming slides. So working on the scent matching at your own pace and your own schedule and in small increments. Um, you want to have the correct answer be when the correct answer is in a particular vessel, it's much easier than running a whole trail for the dog to understand. So you could work the correct match plus a distraction odor. So if your dog, quote unquote, does something, maybe tries to indicate the vessel with the toy or paws at it or anything else, this is helpful feedback for you. So at the early stages for most dogs, just wait him out. When he gets to the matching vessel, give him a big reward. If he's adamant about sticking with the vessel with the distraction, just neutrally end the session. And separately, could you work obedience around the distraction? So if the beloved tug toy is on the ground, close enough to grab, and you say heel or stay or come or whatever obedience your dog knows, can he do the task and not grab the toy? So if not, I would say work on first this amount of clarity. He gets nice things by doing what you ask. If your dog already understands leave it, if he persists with the distraction vessel, tell him to leave it and expect him to choose another vessel. Maybe this is the one with the blank gauze, which will tell you a lot about his understanding of the task. So use distractions. Using distractions also helps you see his body language around these odors. So on the trail, many people worry about saying leave it or back to work because what if it would put him off trailing for the day? Well, if you practice with the scent vessels, he'll probably hear leave it and he understands he has to keep on task. So I will say, for those of you who might not know, scent lineups are controversial. Controversial is admissible evidence in a court of law, and also controversial in dog training circles. There are many, many, many experts who believe that a trailing dog who passes many wrong people while trailing and indicating the correct person um, is not at all prepared for a scent lineup. That a scent lineup is completely different from trailing. Um, However, I would say for easy versions of the scent tubes as described here, it's very doable when you begin with very different scents. So as the dog gets better, um, it, maybe you can more closely related scents might be beyond the scent powers of your dog. So maybe some of you are familiar with gradient generalization. So there's work done with pigeons, rats, dogs, non-human primates. So there's a signal that predicts reward and a signal that predicts no reward. That's the simplest one. There's some other ones that might predict some sort of aversive. But um, you will also do often it'll be like a circle versus a crescent, color blue versus color green, tone A versus tone B. So the learner is presented with blue or the circle or tone A, and then reward is presented. Learner is presented with green or the crescent or tone B, and no reward is available. So once the learner understands this, either the color or the shape or the noise becomes more similar. So as the dog is not able to distinguish between the two tones, or if the color presented, which is, a combination of blue green, if the dog cannot understand which it is it the signal for the good thing or the signal for no reward? And the same with as the circle, becomes more crescent-like. Um, these dogs show signs of anxiety and frustration. So I mention it just as an awareness. It's possible if you are picking um, humans that are too similar, you may cause a lot of anxiety if your dog cannot distinguish between them. So the Sportman trailing test also has a lineup. So the odor differentiation, that's what it's called. This exercise will not have the same people who ran the trail in this lineup. But for the intermediate level of the test, there is a purposeful wrong person placed on the trail. Um, it's possible it would be kind of a bummer, but it's possible that this person could be in your scent lineup. So training the dog for foil work is definitely beneficial. Um, but foil work is also just helpful exercise to do at home. So real search and rescue folks, very often the article and the place last seen are not accurate. Um, so there is no match. That's not going to happen to you in the test or any certification that I know of. Well, I guess sometimes there's multi-day certifications, and so one might be a negative, but you should definitely know what your dog looks like when there is no match. Questions about the basics of vessel using scent vessels? All right, so this is where I find that teams get way more value out of using the scent vessels. Um, to start with, and I'm going to talk more about these three applications, we want to make the scent easy. So you're going to have the correct match and then unscented gauze pads in the others. Because what is being trained is the situation, not his ability to scent. So a lot of you know clever Hans the horse. So he didn't do math, but he was very brilliant at reading people. So before you all branch off into doing some big, crazy, long, blind man trail, can you do the scent vessels blind? Working in distracting places. So if you have any of these thoughts, oh, I hope my trail doesn't go near the pond with the geese or by the skate park or wherever, that's where you should be working your scent tubes. Again, so the scent is just going to be the correct plus two unscented. Um, So as I mentioned at the top, the test does have little bit of obedience. The dog has to sit in heel position to check in. Um, and there's the final indication. So you can get a lot of reps with the vessels, and then so you can use your trailing time just for trailing. Added benefits. It's a clear way to communicate to the dog to discriminate based on smell. So hot starts are a great way to start dogs, but he's not necessarily discriminating at the beginning. Calm start's a great way to start dogs, but he's not necessarily discriminating based on scent at the beginning. So if you add the vessel work, this can give him a much fuller picture of the expectation. So if you find that he has a hard time from refraining from watching people at a skate park, if you encountered this situation on a trail, either he would be unable to resume the trail or he would be really difficult for you to read him. And if you push him, there's a chance he might ghost trail, which we'll talk about in 1 second. Since trails are so hard to get, I know all of you know how hard it is to coordinate schedules and everything. Put in the time on your own schedule to work scent vessels and basic obedience near, in this case, skate parks to get positive repetitions of him focused while in this setting. So in addition to obedience, the vessels are a way to gauge his ability to work in difficult settings. And it's good for you to know. So if you square your hips and shoulders and stare at the wrong vessel, will he still indicate the correct one? So this is another easy way to get a lot of reps to convince him that his nose is better than your body pressure. If there's a beloved toy or food reward as a distractor and you see him torn, this will help you on trail when the scent goes one way, but there's something attractive another way. You can see his body language about being torn. So on trail, especially new handlers have hope that he isn't interested in the deer, but perhaps some trail layer skin rafts have blown that way, maybe even attached themselves to the deer. Again, this sounds a little bit silly, but a lot of beginner teams have this hope. The reason he's staring at a deer has something still to do with the trail layer. So if you tell him back to work or leave it, which a lot of people have a fear of doing during trailing, set a foundation during your vessel work. So, and if some alternative universe your trail layer did brush up against the deer, again, you would say back to work. But unless your trail layer is actually riding the deer, there is no reason the dog should continue to be fixated on that deer. You need more training with leave it. So, any questions about using vessels in the different applications I mentioned? Okay, so gauze is easiest. You can get individually wrapped gauze, you know, 500 for a few dollars. Oh, I'm sorry, Jesse. I was too quick. You can either type it or unmute yourself. Go ahead,
Okay,
Jesse.
so um, a few months ago when we were starting vessels for my team, we had one dog she's fantastic on trails, but she really struggled with vessels because the attention is like 3/4 of her reward. And so with the vessel, she's like, my trail layer is not there, so why do I care? Um, do you have tips for increasing her value with the vessel when the attention from the trail layer is most of her own value of the reward?
Yes. So, would this be a true assumption that you were doing this during your normal like class training time? Or was the woman doing it like in her living room or front yard all by herself?
Yeah, they were doing it as homework
Oh, okay. Okay.
between classes. So at home where there was
Yep,
minimal
yep, yep.
distractions.
Perfect. So yes, that is an issue, right? You're not getting the distraction of the trail layer, nor are you getting um the enthusiasm of the trail layer. I will say that some people will be more apt to lay trails for you um if your dog, if it doesn't touch them, doesn't need stuff from them. And like some of the people who lay my trails, they don't even really want to open a container of food. So maybe not great people to use for a beginner dog who loves attention, but I'm getting a lot of reps on my dog, and he is getting the reward either from me or from just a very neutral, boring type person, and I am providing the praise. So, maybe the vessel work, isn't for everybody. I'm trying to give a bunch of different options and situations and ways to get a lot of repetitions in away from trailing. Um, but the praise that would come from the trail layer, that level of enthusiasm can come from the handler. Um, for real search and rescue, there's not often this big, beautiful find, but you can still reward the dog maybe to where the person was picked up in a car. And so they only have the handler's praise. Um, so I don't know. I hope maybe the benefits aren't there for every team. But the handler can and should praise. And sometimes as you advance, you might find people willing to lay trails for your dog that, might give good girl, and that's about it. Um, so we need to make sure that the handler is also there and giving intense praise. So a few just logistical matters. You can get gauze quite inexpensively. It should be individually wrapped. It's best to use tongs, but if you do touch it, don't worry too much because the dog is used to subtracting out your smell. I've found these 2-ounce kind of shot mason jar style jars. Um, so I'll open the lid and keep the gauze inside the jar so only the glass touches the vessel. Keeping the scent in glass is ideal, but you can also use baggies. Um, the better baggies to use is freezer style, not storage. And if you go to the store and you're like, I don't remember, should I get freezer or storage? Freezer's the more expensive one, usually much more expensive. So freezer holds the scent in better. So Personally, I'll use a pair of samples as the correct answer 2 times, then I will throw it away. Unless the dog is really obsessed with it, then I will discard it after 1 time, or if it becomes soiled, then I will discard it after 1 time. How long does the scent stay? If you're using glass jars, um, pretty much for forever. Like I said, I only use them twice. Um, Twice is the correct answer. I might use them more often as the wrong answer, but um, so if you choose to add scent vessels, um, your homework is to figure out, what vessel you will use. So the PVC pipes are similar. You can just put the tiny glass jar inside, so you don't need to clean it since the gauze never touches it. Um, Solo cups, this is like a light fixture, but people do use this for detection. You could just clip the pad to the cup and then at least air clean the cups between sessions, um, and wash the clips. If you do just cloth on the ground, you should wash these after each use. Clipping gauze to a table leg or other items is also a possibility. I'm going to show you a video shortly. In the interest of time, I will not read the summary. Any questions about the logistics? Okay, so we're going to talk about the shaping of the jar, shaping on, in my case, using the tube as the scent vessel. But I want to emphasize that foundational trails should have uh, the, the article on the ground for your hot start and for your calm start. Um, but when working scent lineups or for more advanced teams, you can start shaping the dog to take scent from a jar or a baggie. So lots of advantages. There could be other trails, human or animal, on the ground the same time your dog hears search. If you have bad luck, your dog may correctly, in his mind, take one of these other trails. So on trial day, you're going to be given a glass jar with a baggie inside, and inside that is the trail layer scent article. Um, if you want to start working on real search and rescue things, um, and you want to do like facility walk-offs, you can get articles from people when they're both on and off their medication. So I strongly suggest you use a jar before a plastic bag, but there is nothing in the jar. There's no scent, there's no food, there is nothing in the jar. If you're having trouble shaping this, use a quote unquote jar with no bottom. You can use like a styrofoam disposable cup that begins as a ring and then is replaced with more and more cup, then go to the jar. So in this case, your jar is empty, but you're just feeding through the ring. So the dog will soon learn that jar work is a precursor for the fun activity of hunting humans. And it's easy for some dogs to be too wound up with even bother taking scent. So once the dog is calmly sniffing the jar well, put on all your trailing gear, go to a place where you would trail, have your flanker, other dogs in the group, everybody's there, make the dog think they're going trailing, but in fact, they only need to calmly sniff the jar to earn all the reward. So it's possible that the dog might be a bit disappointed because he thought the reward would be the hunt and then the food or toy, but instead he's getting only the food or toy. However, without calmly taking the scent, you can't be sure who he will choose to hunt for. So you want a calm body with nose resting in the jar, not the nose poke in and out. You want to look for a visible sniff, look for the nose flare, and you want to do this in many places. So you use the word smell. The dog places his muzzle in the jar, breathes inside the jar, remains in the jar until cued otherwise. The otherwise could be release for food or toy, could be sit while I put the jar in my trailing pouch, could be your cue to search the tubes, or could be your cue to find the human. So again, when you have a whole trail set up, obviously you want to run the trail. But if he's not calm at the start, being successful is going to be difficult. And you can't be sure which scent he's choosing. So this is just kind of a funny, so you could actually just see it there and so put the rest of that. But it's easy to mark because you can see it and you can definitely see it in in the glass jar. Obviously, the glass jar doesn't move in and out. Sorry, if I knew how to turn off the noise, I would. Um, so I wouldn't hold the dog's muzzle like this now. But I have on all of the four legs. And this is actually a foil, so the same setup is there. I just give him scent from person B, and he goes through um, and then switches to person B. So in the interest of time, I won't go over the summary, but you can read it there. So any questions about shaping, taking a scent from a container? All right, we're going to spend about 10 more minutes and talking about some skills for the dog. Um, we're not going to talk about the final indication until toward the end. What I found when I'm working with beginner teams is they're often quite unfocused. So some of it is definitely lack of motivation. And we're going to talk about that. But a lot of it is they don't have clear cues, clear start, clarity if any breaks, clarity at the end, clarity with the scent. So as a quick refresh, um, you're going to use smell, but if you also search for essential oils, footstep track, do a food scatter, or anything like this, those cues need to be different. Leave it when you 100% know it's not trail air scent. If the dog is smelling or licking a stick, you're going to give back to work because maybe the trail layer touched it. And so if you're too new to tell the difference between the dog checking out pee and trail layer contact odor, just say back to work. It's safer. Um, if your dog is not doing leave it, you should train away from man trailing. We're going to talk about enforcing a leave it in the later module. Clear start ritual. So the equipment difference is important, but there needs to be more than that. Um, so we talked last time about a precast, and we also talked about how it's not necessarily the right setup for all dog teams. But some trailer trainers in some situations have their dog take a scent inventory prior to presenting the scent they wish him to follow. The handler takes the dog in a circle around the article or point last seen um, briskly before giving the target scent. So some dogs in some settings feel reprimanded by the precast. So if there's a single path out which they hit when going around the circle, but the handler tugs them, forcing them to finish the circle, um, then later the handler presents the scent and starts the dog might not want to follow the path if they feel they were reprimanded the first time they tried to follow that scent. So if you have a routine which sticks for you, stick with it. If you're too new to have a ritual, you're probably doing a hot or calm start, so keep with that until you're ready for delayed or cold starts. If you're doing cold starts but aren't happy, try precast. Or try skipping the precast and allowing a full 360-degree movement after the article is presented. So as a gentle rule, long line attached to the harness equals work begins. Not on the long line equals off duty. So teams vary quite a bit about when they put on the harness. So we're going to talk about more of that in the future. Um, if you put the harness on before leaving home, fine. Some people do it upon arrival. Some do it after giving the dog a chance to empty. Some do it at the article itself. Beginner team should stick with the article on the ground, but um, later you'll be taking scent from a jar. So mid-trail breaks, good place to hydrate him and you, calm him down if he's frantic. It's a great time to give some situational awareness for yourself. Potentially take his temperature, either literally, this being summer, or just quote unquote take his temperature of his interest in continuing. And if you get really stuck, you could text the trail layer and say, hey, where the heck are you? Um, so you need a lot of clarity for finding the trail layer. Again, long line attached, working, not attached, not working. Again, we're going to talk more about rewards in a future module, but extending the reward is good. If your trail layer is not willing or able to, that's okay. But try to make the walk back to the car very different than fine trail layer time. Any questions about cues, start ritual, break, or ending? All right, so clarity with more scent. More scent, clear on the task. More scent, easier to find, eager for more. more scent, less apt to be distracted. So when you have clarity plus motivation, it will greatly improve your dog's focus. So I think it might be too disruptive to start talking about how the trail layer can add more scent. That's kind of a whole different um, chunk. So any questions on anything talked about tonight or anything that you have in the trails that you've run in the last 2 weeks? We have just about 6 more minutes.
I have kind of a question, Melissa. It's
Yes.
less. So yeah, so I just did the V level man trail at the Idaho test, and there was probably in the course of the whole trail there were probably 8 pieces of trash. How quickly do I pull her away from that? Not physically pull her away, but leave it when she's kind of veering off the trail. The trash was probably anywhere from 1 to 2 feet from the trail to sometimes 6 feet, but it was visual, like a glove or a piece of a hamburger wrapper, things like that, that was visually distracting. So this has to do with the leave it, and back to
Yeah.
work.
Um,
I can see that it's trash. So should I just immediately be telling her this?
well, so if it was, a hamburger wrapper or a glove or whatever, I would say it would be better for you to be more conservative and say back to work. Because what if I'm your trail layer and I really did drop my glove or I was eating a hamburger and then I just littered? Right in the
Right.
realm of possibility, it's very possible that the trail layer, that was the trail layers, or even maybe the trail layer spit on the ground and it was on top of the wrapper. So yeah, back to work is uh always better unless, you totally know it's not at all related to the trail. Um, have you done uh footstep tracking with a lot of articles?
With her or
Yes, with her. Have you had someone lay, gloves, hats, bottle caps as articles for a footstep track?
not a lot, no.
Okay,
But
but when you did,
yeah,
was she rewarded with a food or a toy at the article?
yeah, and we haven't done that for 6 months.
Yep. So,
But she will also indicate on tracking flags, so she also doesn't get those anymore.
what I've found that people that switched um, either from AKC or IGP tracking, switching to man trailing, one problem those dogs have is it takes a while for them to stop uh, darting off trail to check out if such and such a thing is an article. Um, so it can very much congratulations on passing the test. I meant to put it out and mention at the beginning of the call, but with all my internet problems, I it slipped my mind. Um, it, in the heat of the test, if she's still kind of sort of moving forward anyway, I would silently count to three. And if she's moved on before you get to three, I would just ignore it.
Okay.
And then if it's not past three, one thing you can try, same with the Leonberger at the start of the call, just walk up the line and just step on, step over the hot dog wrapper. So now it's your hot dog wrapper, and the dog has to move on because you were physically in the space of the hot dog wrapper. If
Right.
she were to turn back and like get back at the hot dog wrapper, then you could, give a big back to work because, you've kind of nudged her ahead. Um, so those are things you can do. You can go back. So again, congratulations on the test. So probably for preparation for the test, you were probably running um, many, many, many cold starts. So since you have a little bit before you're going to run a future test, I would quit cold starts. I would go, you could do like one of the calm starts that you saw there and have the trail layer, go through a park or a parking lot or whatever where there's many bits of trash. Um, or you can do a delayed start, and that's going to get her, a little more eager and a little more excited than a calm start. So she might have more hope of a big reward at the end and not finding the need to check out articles, potential articles. But so those are some possibilities for you. And if anyone, either on the live call or watching it later, has a dog that did uh, footstep tracking in any venue, um, if your dog, most of the time they're rewarded at articles, but even if your dog was kind of the opposite, punished for not finding an article, um, just work through it, with a hot start, calm start, or delayed start, um, in areas where there's debris, and just uh, give the dog, about 3 seconds to move forward. If the dog doesn't move forward, you know, kind of claim that space, um, encouraging the dog just to move a little bit beyond. Um, and be super gentle with the dogs that have a lot of the footstep tracking, um, being rewarded at articles or even potentially punished for not finding articles. Give them a lot of grace because now you're kind of sort of changing the rules on them. Um, so any last questions before we say goodnight for tonight? And again, I apologize for the internet problems.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, to clarify, she wasn't getting stuck on this stuff. That wasn't the issue. She was just getting distracted. So when I see, and when I'm saying a glove, I didn't say, these weren't like gloves you would wear. They were like medical gloves. So I was concerned they were like drug related, maybe, or,
Yeah, yeah. So if
like,
there's some like safety issue, yep. I
yeah,
mean, even
yeah.
on a test, get right in there. Leave that, you know, you know,
So
get
pretty,
get right on her.
I wouldn't be faulted for that,
No,
being
no, no.
okay.
You wouldn't be faulted for that, especially if it was a food wrapper too or anything. Um, but
Thanks.
then separate, do some obedience, especially send away type things. So I think, Nutmeg probably has introduced it to a few different send away things, but for everyone else, even just like a go to the platform, have her do go to the platform and have booby traps there and just say, don't worry about those. I just need you to do the go to the platform thing.
Right, right.
That's
Ignore.
gonna just help her focus on the task at hand. Don't worry about debris. in the parking lot or whatever, just run to the platform or circle the tree or do the retrieve or whatever other kind of send away um, thing you want to work.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Good night, everybody. And thank you, Nancy, for all the help.